Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's begin. Today is 21st of November 2024. The topic that we have covered in previous class was case and if. So we actually tried implementing case and we tried implementing if. Both of them are selection statements. Okay, so these are not the conditional statements, these are selection statements. And we write the code and etc. etc. So I'm going to continue with from here on. So today we will try to put the concept of loops, iterations, and the concept of selection statements together. Okay. So maybe once again, for some people, it will get a little bit boring. But what you can get out of it, you try to learn the structure of how to write a programming language, how to give your problem solving shape. So there are so many things to learn from the lecture that's right. Even if you're a bit of an advanced programmer. Okay. For that, I'm going to introduce some of the programming concepts, very baseline programming concepts, but again, there is a lot into it. Better programming concepts. So I'm resuming from here, programming concepts. In programming concepts, there can be a lot of things, but there are some very baseline things. For example, we talk about the concept of totaling, the concept of counting or counting with condition. Counting with condition. And the concept of extreme values. All right. In totaling, we use a variable. The concept is like that we need to add some numbers with one another. So how to do that? Totaling. So variable can be anything. Okay. So in the concept of totaling, total assigned to total plus, and there can be any other variable. So you can call it, it's like kind of a mathematical expression in which you can add two values and you update this variable itself. Okay. So how this actually works, we will going to apply it and then see. Remember that the concept is this, that if you use any variable, you can use this variable plus, and there can be any other variable as well. Okay. Like this. Okay. So the main concept is this variable and the variable on the other side of the assignment operator should be the same. Same concept of counting with condition. I'm first going to just write down some statements. Of course, we will going to apply them in some sort of a program later on. I'm going to just create one exemplary condition. If marks, if in some program marks, the requirement is that if marks are greater than 100, then count assigned to count plus 1 and if. Yes. So do remember that this portion is basically known as counting. And this is what is counting. We're doing counting with the condition. we're adding +1 to a variable. Now this variable again can be anything, but every time if you add +1 to that variable, in some sort of a condition, if prices are greater than 200, then above assigned to above +1, it can be anything. But this is what it's mean when we say counting with condition. In extreme values, I'm going to give you some scenario again. We will be using a variable, maybe a variable highest, which can be initialized with -10,000, or maybe a variable lowest that can be initialized with +1,000. And then within the program, this condition comes up if, let's say price, let's take this example. If price greater than highest, if price greater than highest, then highest assigned to price. Again, at this moment, I haven't explained you anything, so don't worry about, the whole thing will come up later on. I haven't explained you about anything. And then at the end, output highest or lowest. Of course, if the condition will be for the lowest, it will be something like this. If price less than lowest, then you people should know about the structure. That is important. Lowest assigned to price. And then, okay. So there we go. We have these all tools with us, and now we need to use these all tools in our program. So these are some of the programming concepts that we will going to use today, inshallah. So let's try to put it into some example. Again, some of my advanced programming coding students, as soon as if I write down the question, you try to answer it all by yourself. Okay. So if you already know the drill, if you already know the answers, try to answer them or code them in VB.NET, which we are using right now. In totaling, I'm just creating one exemplary question. Let's suppose that there is a question in which the question is often starts in CI something like this, write an algorithm. This is the short form of algorithm, algo, using pseudocode, P is silent, pseudocode, which input marks of 10 students. So it's a program which takes input marks of 10 students, calculate total, perform total or calculate total marks, output average. So simply a very simple, very plain question. You have to input marks of 10 students, do the total, and then output the average marks of all the students. Like what is the average marks of that class in which there are 10 students? Now, for some of my students who may face difficulty when to start the loop, when to close the loop, where to calculate the average, where to calculate the total. Now, this is where you actually pay attention. Whenever we start answering the questions like this one in a form of pseudocode, the very first thing that we do is we leave some lines empty at the beginning to declare the variables or initialize the variables. Why we do that? Because when we start writing the answer, during answering the question, we come up with the idea of what to name our variables. So you cannot just like immediately think about all the variables in the beginning. So while you're writing the solution, you think of names of the variables, and as you keep using those variables, or at the same time, you can declare them or initialize them at the top. Okay, very first thing, how what is the kind of approach that you look into? How you can, like for example, Nahil, if you need to teach someone at how to take the data out of this question, okay, how to find out the names of the variables, write an algorithm using pseudocode which input what marks, it input marks for how many students, for 10 students. Now you should start brainstorming that I need to run a loop 10 times. Within that loop I have to input marks. The user will going to input marks and it will going to store into a variable. After that, I also have to calculate total. So it's mean that we need to use the concept of totaling. Even in the bigger problems, programs, later on, you will going to use the same strategy to understand the questions and then find your data out of it. And then, start writing the solution. So we have to input marks for the 10 students. We have to do the total and we have to output average. So now this, you have just made this whole concept in your brain. We have to run the loop, we have to input, we need to do the total, and in the end, after calculating the average, we need to output the average. Okay. So we need to input marks for 10 students. So how we do that? We use a loop. For this is the very first thing that we need to do. You can use any variable. We have used the variable x for x 1 to 10 because there were 10 students. After that, we just not only input, we input with prompt. Output, enter marks, and then input. Input marks. तुम ऐसे लिख लो यार, ठीक है, बिल्कुल. Okay, so input marks, and after that we need to do the total. There was nothing else. They just asked us to do the total. So we are calculating the total. Whatever that value, whatever the variable that we have used to input marks, that is the variable that we will going to add into the total. So for the people who might be just doing it for the very first time, they can use this, conceptual remembering that whatever that you input, add that thing into this total statement. Okay. So after that, should we do x is equal to x plus 1? We will not going to do that because it's a for next loop. Yes, in for next automatically increment the variable. Okay, after that, after the loop, because once you have done with the total of all the 10 students, after that you calculate the average. So average will be calculated by calculating total with 10. And next there will be 11. So there were 10 people, so we did the total of all the marks and we divided it with the 10. After that, let's do output, a meaningful output. Output. The average, comma, and AVG. Okay, we haven't done yet. Let's declare the variables at the top. Declare marks, comma, total, integer. Why you're making mistakes, Nahil? Declare average. Declare average real. Okay. We must need to initialize total with 0. If you forgot to initialize, you will get -1 marks. It's a necessary thing because all the programming concepts which I've mentioned above, those all values have to be initialized. Let me just put it there. If you're using this concept of counting with condition, so you have to initialize count with 0. In this, the concept of totaling, you have to initialize total or sum with 0. Okay. So this program is now finally completed. Let me move on to the next two concepts as soon as possible. Rather, let's try to merge two concepts together. For example, the concept of extreme values and the concept of counting with condition. And then when we will go for coding, we will merge all the three concepts in one go. So let's do this quickly. Let's write down another exemplary question. This is our question number 2 from today's topic, programming concept. I'm going to use both of the concepts in this question, the counting with condition and the extreme values. So write down a pseudocode using, write down an algorithm using pseudocode which inputs
the names and nodes.
Input prices,
So,
price of 50 items. Let's make it 15 items.
15 events.
Input price of 15 items. Count and output number of devices. These are the keywords. As soon as you hear number of, it's mean counting will be done. Number of items having price
Above
below 5,000. Output the highest price. Chale, it's my turn. Okay, so input price of 15 items, it's mean we will be using a for next loop to input price. For that, we have to input price for 15 items. We have to count and output how many number of items have price below 5,000. So this will be counting with condition. This is counting with condition. And then we have to output the highest price. This means that we have to do both of the things. Now let's do this. Let's solve. As always, we will going to leave some space for declaration and initialization. And what loop should I start with? For, and give me a variable. Let's make this variable I today. Starting with 1, ending with 15. Let's do this input with prompt quickly as possible. Output enterprise. Enterprise and input price. Price is our variable. Okay. This is the variable which we're going to hold the value. What is the next thing that we need to do? We need to count and output number of items. It has mentioned count and output. Remember that counting will be done within the loop. Output will be done outside the loop. Okay. So what is the condition? If, what is the condition?
Input is equals to less than 5,000, then count is
Price below 5,000. So if price below 5,000, then count assigned to count plus 1. And if. So we have used our first concept of counting with condition. What was the second requirement? This one.
put the highest values.
So this is extreme values. If highest, sorry, if price, no, if price is greater than highest, La ilaha illallah. If price greater than highest, then highest assigned to price and if. This is the pattern which you need to remember. Anytime if you will be finding out any highest or lowest value, this is the pattern. If the variable greater than highest, if the variable greater than lowest, if the variable greater than best, if the variable less than worst, then best or highest or greatest or tallest assigned to that variable. So you really need to remember that pattern. So for next, because we don't need to do anything much, then we have to output. What is the very first thing that we need to output? Output number of prices above 5,000 colon colon, this is our message, comma, count. Okay. Output number of, sorry, what was that? What was the second output? The highest price. Now this program will going to find out which item has the highest price among all the 15 items. So the highest price, comma, highest. Are we forgetting something? Hey guys, are we forgetting something? Are we missing out something? Declaration and initialization. So let's declare highest price and count, all initialized as integers.
सर अभी कौन सा वाला करना है थोड़ा सा
Price assigned to, we do not need to initialize the input variable. Count must be initialized to 0. Highest must be initialized to,
zero.
you can initialize highest with 0, but the strategy is to use a bigger value with the lowest in extreme values. The variables like highest, tallest, biggest, largest, they are initialized with the value with the lowest worth. For example, minus 1,000 or minus 10,000, something like that. And in extreme values, if you need to initialize variables like slowest, smallest, worst, shortest. You always give them a bigger value, like 10,000 or maybe 1,000. Now, what is the reason behind this? Because we keep that worst scenario possibility in our mind. For example, I will just try to write down the question, the answer, and then we will try to find it out. We're going to run some test data and try to find out the solutions. So we are done with all the programming concepts in question number 1 and question number 2. Let's code one another question. I'm going to change the question for coding. So everyone, we are moving to Visual Basic. We're using Visual Studio 2022 Community Edition, which is free of cost. You can download and you can use. Let's create a question. And you have to program that question all by yourself. Usman, can you program that question? I'm going to give you access to this laptop. Code it. Brilliant. Okay. So write a code in VB.NET to input top speed of cars participating, top speed of bikes
Participating in MotoGP 2024.
participating in a legal race. This is important. This is not some, okay? Fast and Furious. Write a code in a VB.NET to input top speed of bike participating in a legal race. Your program must output the highest speed of a bike, total the average speed of all bikes, average top speed of all bikes, and output number of bikes having top speed above 300 in that race. Okay?
The number of bikes.
Output number of bikes having top speed above 3. How many of the bikes had the top speed above 300?
Total bikes का कितना रहता है?
यही है ना?
40 bikes का रहता है.
Oh, it's a very good thing. Input top speed of 20 bikes. Yeah, 20 bikes. Participating in a legal race, your program must output the highest speed of a bike, total, the average, I think this should be mentioned like this. The average top speed of all bikes, output number of bikes having top speed above 300 in that race. Okay. This is the question and you all have to complete it. You have to code it. Sohaib and Ahmed, I highly recommend that you people have this IDE installed at your laptops and PCs, and you should be writing this code all by yourself with me. I'm going to write down the code. Okay, the very first thing that we start with is with the loop for x 1 to 20. Okay. Let's declare some of the variables. Dim, I think top speed, and highest, and count, and any other variable that we might need, total as integer. Dim, average as single. Single means real value. Okay. Total will be initialized with 0. Count will be initialized with 0. Highest will be initialized with minus 1000 or 10,000. We do not need to initialize average or top speed, so leave them as it is. Within the loop, what is the very first thing that we need to do? Input withdraw. What does we write down instead of output in bb.write? Console.write. Enter the top speed. Okay. Console.top speed equals to console.readline. Okay. So yeah, I agree with you on this, but just for, if somebody might be facing difficulty understanding the whole concept, so they make this rule of thumb that they always initialize highest with minus 10,000. It will do the job. Number cutting in easy. No issue. Okay. So top speed is equal to console.writeline. But what is the next thing that we need to do? Output the highest speed of the bike. If top speed greater than highest, then highest is equal to top speed. Done? What was the second thing? The average. For average, we need total. For average, we need total. They didn't ask us to calculate the total, but they asked us about the average. So you should yourself know that we need to do the total. So total equals to total plus top speed. After that, all right. So we did total because they asked us for the average. Bad. Output number of bikes having speed above 300. Can you tell me the condition? Output number of bikes having top speed above 300. What should I write? We have to calculate output number of bikes. So we first have to apply the condition, okay? Counting with condition. Number of bikes having top speed above 300. So what should I write down here? If top speed greater than, then count equals to count plus 1. Well done. So we have calculated all these three things, and now we need to conclude here after the loop. Console.writeline. The average, instead of comma, we use this symbol. And we haven't calculated the average. So we need to calculate the average after the loop as well. Average equals to total upon 20. All right. So because we also have to run the program, so I'm going to write down only 7 bikes. Okay. 7 times. We're going to run the loop 7 times. If this program runs fine for the 7 bikes, it will going to run the same for the 20 bikes or 200 bikes as well. So output average, console.writeline, the number of bikes how to mention like the 300, the 300, yeah, the 300 looks good. The 300, there was a movie 300 as well, 300. So the 300 console or the 300 के बाद क्या आएगा? Average, the top speed. The top speed. the toppest.
Output.
Highest. So let's run the program and have a look if it works fine. Guys, let me just bore you a little bit and listen to me very carefully because I'm going to run this program for a number of times. I'm going to trace this program 7 times. I'm going to debug this program one line at a time. So I'm going to use the F11 key. For the laptop people, you might have to press F11 and then F11. And if you're not using Visual Studio 2022, you might be pressing F8. So total is initialized with 0, count is initialized with 0, highest is initialized with -10. So console.write, enter the top speed. The reason I'm just showing you the screen because either in VB.NET or maybe later on in Python, you should be doing this. Look, I can see the console. I can see the code. I can see right now where the control is. Now this line is about to be decoded and executed. Look, now this line has been executed. I can see the message, but it's still not taking the input. As soon as this line will run, it is automatically jumping to this console and asking for the input. As soon as I input some value and I hit enter, I can hover my mouse over this variable and I can see that 301 has been entered into this variable. So I just want you to trace this program like this by yourself. Okay, now let's keep tracing. Right now inside top speed is 301. It is definitely more than -1000. So the very first speed, it will replace the highest with 301. Because this is the very first speed, this is the highest speed. Total. Inside total right now it's 0. Total plus top speed, it will become 301. This is the very first value. 301 is greater than 300. Yes. And count will also become 1. So the very first speed, 301, we get the total. The count is 1. Next, x become 2. As soon as this is the second time we are inputting the speed, let's input 290. Is 290 greater than 301? No, it will skip it because the highest will only going to update if there will be any other value bigger than the previous one. So this is how we find the highest value. Inside total, we total all the values. In total, it's 301. 301 plus 290 will become what? 591. Okay. 2 bikes and we have 591 in total. That's crazy. Is 290 greater than 300? It will also skip it. So this count will only iterate when there will be speeds greater than 300. Okay. All right. So the third bike has speed 300.
191, 200, 300.
Skipped, got the total, skip, because speeds greater than 300 will be highlighted. And this program will going to run 313. Highest speed is now updated because the new highest speed is 313. Total is done. 313 is greater than 300. Count is made. And 302. Ducati Veyron have Ducati. What kind of Ducati bike has V4 engine? What we call it?
Okay.
We're talking about bikes, not cars. Okay. 303. Last but not the least bike, 295. Ducati panel gun. Okay. This is not a practical bike now. Okay, because loop have been executed for the 7 times. Guys, look, inside total we have this big value. After dividing with 7, we have the average 300 something, which is really nice. Overall bikes have the average speed above 300. Maybe this is the Isle of Man, the most dangerous course for the bikes. Okay, so the average speed will be displayed. The total number of bikes which had speed above 300 will be displayed. We can see that. So the average speed is 300 something. Total number of 4 bikes had speed above 300. We can see that 301, 313, 302, and 303. Okay, and last, the top speed will also be displayed, which is 313 among all the 7 bikes. So this is one very simple example in which we have used all the programming concepts. Real trick of learning programming is writing code. Look, pseudocode, structured English, flowcharts, whatever. Or maybe if you're coding in Java, .NET, or maybe in Python. The real trick is that you made your own code. You make your own code and then trace it, the program one line at a time, and to check that what that code is doing at every step. So that is the trick of learning coding, okay? Debugging your code all by yourself. So I'm going to wrap up my lecture here.